Hey friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff, and in this video, I am talking all about Cricut's new 24-inch cutting machine, Cricut Venture. Cricut Venture is so much more than just Cricut's version of a 24-inch cutter. As you can see, it looks like no other Cricut machine you've ever seen, and there are a lot of features on here that really set it apart, I think, from some of the other 24-inch cutters on the market. So in this video, I'm going to be going over all the different parts of the machine, how it works, how it's different from other Cricut cutting machines, how it's different from other 24-inch cutters out there on the market. Then I'm going to give you my pros and my cons so that you can make your best choice for your needs, space, and budget. So there is definitely some new lingo here. I'm going to be referring to parts of this machine that just don't exist on other Cricut machines. So if you are confused about any of the lingo or anything, I did write a full blog post all about this machine over at heyletsmakestuff.com. I will go ahead and link to that as well. I go through the parts a little bit more there than I think I am here. But just in case you're like, what is a rail? You can go ahead and reference that blog post to figure out what I'm talking about. So let's take a look at the machine itself. It doesn't really look like any other Cricut machine. It has this sort of rail that sits along the outside of the machine, sort of like a professional plotter, if you're kind of familiar with one of those. And this is the carriage, and it moves back and forth along that rail. So you'll notice that the carriage is quite large, but it does have the same tools as a Cricut Explorer. It's got an A clamp and a B clamp, and it can use a variety of tools and pens and those sorts of things, which we'll cover a little bit later in this video. But I did want to point out that it does have that basically the same carriage as a Cricut Explorer. There's a big lever over on the left-hand side of the machine, and that opens and closes these pinch rollers. And basically the pinch rollers are what hold the material into the machine as it's being cut. One other thing that holds the material in as you're cutting is a vacuum sealing system. So there are holes in the bed of the machine, and those holes actually, when you're running the machine, turn on and basically create a vacuum seal between the back of your material and the machine to help control the material in the machine a little bit better. This does mean that this machine makes more noise than any other Cricut machine. You'll hear it whirring as we turn it on here in a little bit, but do know that there is a little bit more noise when it comes to this machine compared to Cricut's other machines. I mentioned these pinch rollers. These pinch rollers can actually move back and forth so that you can cut 13-inch smart materials or 25-inch smart materials and mats. The buttons on the machine will be familiar to any Cricut user. We have a load button, a play button, and a pause button. They work exactly the same as they do on other Cricut machines, and there's also a status light. So that's kind of the basic overview. Now let's talk specifics. So the thing that you're probably noticing first is that the bed of this machine is at a 45-degree angle. And honestly, this is pretty brilliant. All other cutting machines at this size are flat machines, which means that you need several feet of space behind and in front of the machine to work the machine. But with the 45-degree angle, it's utilizing more space above and below the machine. So it takes up so much less space than a flat cutting machine. And you'll see that here in a bit. I will put a mat in here, and you'll see that as it cuts straight up here and straight down here. It does take up some room, but if you flatten that out, it is just so much more room to make projects than you need with this machine. This also means that Cricut Venture needs to sit at the edge of a table. So that's why I'm kind of filming in this weird setup. That's not my normal setup. I'm not behind the safety of my table today, but it does need to sit at the edge of a table. So I have here, it's a pretty heavy machine, so I have it on my work surface here, and I have it kind of pushed up to the front of this table. There is also a docking stand available. I'm going to do a whole video on the docking stand itself. This video would just be too long if I covered that, and I wanted to show that you can use Cricut Venture without that stand, but it does need to sit at the edge of a table, which is a good thing that all tables have edges, right? You do want a sturdy table, and you do want to be able to work it in a place where you can set it at the edge of the table. Obviously, this machine can also cut enormous projects. So there are basically two sizes that you can set it at, 13 inches and 25 inches. At 13 inches, you can use any of the smart materials that you can use inside a Cricut Maker or a Cricut Explorer 3. So there's all sorts of smart vinyl removable and permanent, iron-on, smart stencil. All of those can be cut by moving one of these pinch rollers to the middle, and then you can cut that smaller size. Cricut is also releasing 25-inch smart materials. So all of those same materials now come in these extra wide sizes. And I have to say, I did a batching project where I cut 27 t-shirts from a single sheet of smart vinyl, and it was amazing. Just to watch it cut that large amount of material, it was really, really impressive. With the release of this machine, they are also releasing some other larger format materials. So you can buy 24 by 28 inch Cricut cardstock, which is huge. Those are cut on very large mats. And you can buy 13 inch by 24 inch smart paper, which is their paper that has that adhesive on the back. With the smart materials, you can cut up to a single cut of 12 feet, and you can complete that for an entire roll of smart vinyl. So the biggest rolls they have are 72 feet long, which are absolutely enormous. So if you are making a whole bunch of enormous decals or anything like that, you can cut up to 12 inches at a time for the entire 72 feet of smart material. Smart materials, depending on which one you're getting, also come in 21-foot rolls and 5-foot rolls, so you don't necessarily need to buy that giant roll, but do know that you can cut an absolutely massive number of images all in one go. And then you may be wondering, can I just cut regular stuff? You totally can. I'll go over the mat sizes here in a little bit, but if you're just cutting anything that you would cut on a normal Cricut mat, you can totally cut it with this machine. Another thing that sets this apart is the speed. And when I say it is fast, like I have a really hard time explaining how fast it is. I think my son put it best. We were watching its first kind of major cut that I was doing, and his little brain is just watching it going, and he goes, I feel like I'm in fast motion, which is basically how I feel when I watch this machine cut. It is so fast. It is both fast at cutting with the carriage, and it is fast at feeding those rollers in and out. So when you're cutting large projects, you'll see that the material just shoots in and out of this thing, and that carriage is moving so fast. I am really, really impressed with the speed of this machine. I actually did a speed test. So I cut a sort of floral book image, and when I cut it on here in Smart Vinyl, it took 1 minute and 40 seconds. I cut that same image on Smart Vinyl in my Cricut Maker 3, and it took 2 minutes and 39 seconds, so almost an entire minute slower. I then put Smart Vinyl on a mat and cut it on my original Maker on the mat, and it took 4 minutes and 17 seconds. And watching that older Maker cut it, I was like, holy moly, that's so much slower than the 1 minute and 40 seconds that it took for this Cricut Venture to cut that image. I mentioned cutting with mats, and one of the things that this machine also has are these mat supports. These are deployed by pushing a button over on the other side of the machine, and it basically helps support the mat as it's being cut. The center one here and the bottom one are both inside the machine, and then you add these extra supports if you feel like your mat is sagging a little bit. This really just gives those mats more support because the machine is not very large itself. It's just kind of needed for cutting those sorts of projects that are sort of heavy on the mat. Additionally, when you push that mat support button, these little pegs pop up here. Those hold your mat into the machine when you go to cut it, so it doesn't just slide through. One thing I do worry about a little bit is sort of the flimsiness of these mat supports. I feel like you could probably knock them pretty good. I actually talked to Cricut about it, and there are some like tension elastics inside here so that if you do knock it off, it should stay connected to the machine. But I do feel like they're just a hair flimsy. They do support the mat great, but everything else on here feels really sturdy, and these feel just a little bit flimsier as far as the machine design goes. Another feature you are going to love is that you can do print then cut with this. If you have a massive printer that prints 24 inches or 13 by 19 or any of those larger sizes, you can use print then cut with this machine. They are updating Cricut Design Space so you can cut those larger projects. I think that is amazing. Like, imagine a 24-inch sheet of stickers. You can make so many stickers in one go. Cricut Venture works with Design Space. I know there are a lot of different opinions about Design Space, but at least you don't have to learn a new program. You do need to use the desktop version of Cricut Design Space. Designing very large files on your phone can be very difficult, so they have limited it to just Cricut Design Space desktop. I do think you might be able to design on your phone, but to cut, you're going to need the desktop version of Cricut Design Space. Now let's talk about the size of the machine. So obviously it is pretty big. However, I think it's really reasonably sized for everything that it does. So it's, I think, about a little less than 35 inches long. It's about 8 inches deep, and with the carriage, I think about 11 inches high. So really, it's not that big of a machine for being able to cut these really large projects. It's heavy, but not unbelievably heavy. The box that it came in was pretty heavy. I could lift it. It came with handles, but I will say that the most awkward thing for me is that I don't have very long arms. So I can grip it on both sides, but I do find the size of it just a little bit awkward to move around my craft room. Like I said, I will be talking about the docking station in another video. That's actually where I keep this machine, so I don't normally keep it here on this desk. And the docking station has wheels, which is awesome. So if you are going to be moving it around, just know that it is a little bit heavy. I mean, like I can do it, it's not that heavy, but it is a little bit awkward in length. And then like I mentioned before, because of the 45-degree angle, you don't need nearly as much space to the front and back as you do with other cutters. So you need about, I did some math, and I think you need about 40 inches total, kind of split between the back and the front of the machine, which means that you can put this on a standard size countertop and totally use it even with one of the big mats, because you really only need about 20 inches from the center of this machine back and then 20 inches to the front down below the front of the machine. Other machines may need something like 6 feet of space, so 40 inches feels very reasonable to me to be able to make the types of projects you can make using this cutter. So this is basically engineered to be a very, very large Cricut Explorer. So it can use all the same tools and cut all the same materials as a Cricut Explorer. It can't cut those maker materials. We chatted with the Cricut team and they said it would just make the machine too expensive and too heavy. So we have basically a Cricut Explorer carriage, which means that if you can cut it on a Cricut Explorer, you can cut it on a Cricut Venture. Of course, you can cut smart materials and you can cut things like iron-on and vinyl and cardstock on a mat, but you can also cut infusible ink and that faux suede and leather. You can cut Cricut felt, you can cut all sorts of other materials using this machine. And like I said, it can use pretty much all of Cricut Explorer's tools. So it comes preloaded with what they're calling the performance fine point blade, and it's basically a stronger fine point blade, just to kind of deal with the amount of force and speed that this machine can cut with. You can use a regular fine point blade in this machine. It will probably just wear out a little bit faster. And then you can use all the other things that fit in a Cricut Explorer's carriage with this machine. So you can use the foiling tool, you can use the scoring stylus, you can use, let's see, the deep cut blade, the bonded fabric blade, and all the pens and markers. They also created some really, really thick markers, which I love. Like I made a garage sale sign yesterday, and watching this thing draw at such speed with these big, thick markers was very entertaining for some reason. I was like, wow, it's doing such a good job. So if you need to make, you know, garage sale signs or protest signs or bulletin board sorts of things, using those big markers in this is a really good option. So I mentioned you can use the scoring stylus and you just put it there in the A clamp. This is one of the very few things I've had an issue with while working with this machine. So I was making a ton of paper stars to kind of photograph this with, and I was using the scoring stylus to help me fold those stars. And twice it exerted probably just a little bit too much pressure or a little bit too much force, and it tore the paper a little bit and basically ejected the scoring stylus out. It just kind of popped out and landed on the floor. Not my favorite, but that is something that they can fix through, I think, firmware updates. So I let them know that I was having that issue, so hopefully that will be fixed. It did score dozens of pieces of paper perfectly. It was just I had 2 times where it didn't. And, you know, of all the things, it really wasn't the worst thing to happen, but it was a little bit annoying. Let's look at the mats that fit in this machine. So there are 2 sizes of mats that fit in this machine, 12 by 24 and 24 by 28, which is absolutely enormous. And they are specialized for this machine. That is because the amount of force and the speed of the machine actually was tearing up the regular Cricut mats, so they had to give these sort of performance mats. So the mats are slightly different color, like they're the same colorway, but they're much darker. So you have a kind of dark blue mat for light grip, a dark green mat for the standard grip, and a dark purple mat for the strong grip. There is no pink fabric grip mat. That was really made for the maker for the rotary blade, and this can't use a rotary blade. So if you are using that bonded fabric blade with bonded fabric, you can just use a regular green or purple mat, whatever's working best for your material. There are also a couple of small accessories you'll want to know about. The first, over on the other side of the machine, is a little cutoff blade. So you pull it out and then you can actually use it to cut off any smart materials after you're done cutting them. And it works sort of like a letter opener or paper cutter. It works pretty well. I found that it works better if you really pull down on the material as you cut. If not, you can kind of get like a not quite straight edge. Then there's also the optional auto cutoff tool, which you can buy separately. It's basically a blade that goes in the A clamp, and when you're done cutting your smart materials, it will cut off your smart materials for you, so you don't have to use the manual one. This is one of the few things I haven't actually been able to make work. I do know other people who've gotten this machine and they're making it work just fine, so I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong, but it's something I need to look into a little bit more. I think it's a great feature because then it saves you from having to do it manually. I just need to figure out how to make it work. And then additionally, in the back, there are two sort of like roller pieces that you can attach. This allows you to put a roll of smart materials in the back of the machine so that they can feed nicely into the machine. That comes with it. You don't need to buy it like the extra roll holder for the Maker 3 and Explorer 3. These little roll holders come with the machine. Another thing that comes with the Cricut Venture is this little cleaning kit. Now, I mean, I wipe down my Cricut machines occasionally, make sure they're not getting dusty, make sure there's nothing stuck in the blade, but I don't do like a regular cleaning. This is a professional machine, so it kind of needs professional cleaning. And I mean, if you have any sort of big machinery that you're running, especially for a business, it's just going to require maintenance. So this one does as well. So it's got a couple tools here. The first is this little, it's really like a big toothbrush. And this is for cleaning these rollers here in the front. So basically stuff can get crammed in there and you just want to give them a little scrub every once in a while. The second thing is this rail needs to be cleaned. Just because dust and, if you're me, pet hair and all sorts of things can settle within the rail itself, they've added this little clippy thing and a little microfiber cloth that you can use to clean the rail. So I'm just gonna do it right here so you can see, and then you can like slide this back and forth and clean the rail. Cricut Design Space will prompt you every 100 hours that you use this to clean the rail, but I highly recommend that you kind of just keep an eye on it to make sure that it's, I mean, like I've got a Bernese Mountain Dog, his hair is everywhere. And so, I mean, I've used this a bunch of hours, but I'm not anywhere close to 100 hours yet. And I could already see dog hair like hiding in the rail. So just keep in mind that you want to keep that rail clean because it will extend the life of your machine and it will allow the carriage to run back and forth on the rail more easily. All right, let's try cutting so that you can see exactly how this works, how fast it is, and all of that. So I'm gonna start with a smart vinyl image and then I'm gonna do one on the mat. So normally I would be standing in front of this machine to operate it, but if I'm standing in front of the machine, you can't see what's happening. So I'm going to attempt to operate it from the back while sort of crouching over so that you can see it. So I apologize for any sort of awkwardness of the filming of this, but I really want you to be able to see how the actual machine works. And if I'm standing in front of it, that's not gonna work for anybody. So here is how we do smart materials. So before we insert our material, there are a couple things to look at. The first are these little guides here. So there's one in the center and one on each side. When you're using the wider 25-inch materials, you're gonna be using just the two on the sides need to be open. If you're using the smaller material, you'll open that center one so that you can use it as a guide. The second thing we need to do is make sure our pinch rollers are in the right place. So to do that, you need to open the lever and then you can move this pinch roller basically back and forth. So if it's in the middle, you're cutting that small material, we are cutting the large material, so it needs to be over here on the side. So to start, I'm gonna lift the lever over here on the left, and then I'm gonna feed the smart material in. So I have it on the rolls in the back, and there are two guides basically up here at the top where I can feed this in. Now you wanna feed it in until it covers this sensor down here. If you go too far, that's okay because it's gonna pull it out and measure how much you need and it'll stop it back at the right place, but you do wanna make sure that the sensor is covered. Now you're gonna close the pinch rollers by closing the lever. Okay, so my material is loaded and I actually turned my machine on so you can hear that vacuum sealing. It doesn't have, like if I just let it sit here, it will stop after a while, just like that, when it's like, okay, she's not ready to do what she's doing yet, but it will kick back in once I go to make my project. Within Cricut Design Space, you will see all of the steps you need to make sure you're taking. It will tell you where you need to move the pinch roller, which of these little guides needs to be open, whether or not you have the auto cutoff blade selected. I put mine in there, we'll see what happens. But basically this is now ready to cut. So I do have this sitting on these rollers in the back, but my guess is that they're not gonna be able to keep up with the amount of material and speed that we're working with here. So I will end up with sort of material hanging off the back of my machine, and that's totally fine. There are some features in the docking stand that make a lot of this a lot easier. But again, if you're using it on a table, this is how it's gonna look. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit this load button. So now it's gonna make sure that we have the right amount of material. This does now have kind of a big loop of material in the back, but that's okay. And then our next thing is just to cut it. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit cut. I'm gonna aim at the other camera here so you can see exactly how quickly this thing works. so you can see that my auto cutoff blade still didn't do what it was supposed to do. So this is a fairly substantial image. I'm gonna go ahead and weed it so you can see what it actually cut. I looked at the cut time based on how long I was recording this, and it was just a hair over 4 minutes. So I wanna show you just how big of an image you can cut in such a short amount of time. All right, so here is the image that we cut. It took me longer to weed it by far than it took to cut it. So about 4 minutes to cut. You wouldn't be able to cut this obviously on any other Cricut machine, it's just too large, but it also is just so fast and so accurate. I had absolutely no pieces of vinyl that were not in their like little correct place when I went to weed it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna actually put this, I have a very large round mirror, and I think I'm actually gonna try and put this on the glass in the mirror. I think that would be really cool. All right, now let's cut a project using cardstock. So the process is similar, but there are a few more things you need to do. The first is we need to press that matte button over there, which is going to open up our matte guides and allow us to put the matte in without it flopping around. You'll notice again that when I press that matte button, these little matte stops, I'm not really sure what to call them, these matte stops popped up, which means that when we put our matte into our machine, it's gonna rest on those stops. So now you can see just how large this mat is. It's really, really big. I can't even fit it all in the camera here. So it has a piece of Cricut's new cardstock. All we need to do now is lower that lever and cut. So this is the image that I cut. It cut in less than 3 minutes. It actually was even more complex than this. I didn't realize all the parts weren't connected, so there were some other shapes in here and in the center, but you can see just how intricately and quickly this Cricut Venture can cut large projects like this. So let's talk price, because that really is the kicker, right? This machine is $999, so basically the same as the Cricut AutoPress when it's priced at full price. You can also get that docking stand that I mentioned, which is another $250 if you purchase it with the machine, or $350 on its own. And I really like that docking stand, so I am gonna do a video all about it. But as you can see, I was totally able to work my machine without that docking stand, and I wanted to make sure I showed you that first before showing you that extra. With that $1,000 price tag, let's talk pros and cons. So my first pro is that this would be really, really great for somebody with a small Cricut business. So if you are currently running like 5 Cricut machines to get all of your projects done that you need to sell, this can take care of that for you easily. Instead of having to run all of those machines individually, you can run one big machine at once. Like I said earlier, I batched a bunch of t-shirts earlier this week. I made 27 t-shirts, and together with one other person, we finished everything in under 2 hours, which is crazy fast to make 27 t-shirts from somebody who doesn't often make that many t-shirts. Maybe if you have a small business, that you could do it even faster if you're used to that process. But that includes cutting all of the projects, weeding them, and then making them using my AutoPress. So you can move so much faster with this machine. And I know there are a lot of people out there who want to have a small crafty business who may not already. So I did want to throw in a little plug for something I run with Angie Holden over at the Country Chic Cottage. We run a camp every year called Crafting for Profit Camp. And that will happen again in January 2024. So I know it's a little ways off, but if you want to get signed up for updates about that event, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to sign up in the description below. So if you are looking at maybe starting a small crafting business and you think a Cricut should be a part of that, definitely sign up for our event and keep this machine on your radar as something that you might want to start your business with. Another huge benefit is the amount of space that this takes to run this whole machine. I mean, the machine itself, yes, is large, but really for what it can do, it's not very large at all. I mean, it's only 8 inches deep, 11 inches tall, and a little less than 35 inches wide. That's a decent sized machine, but it doesn't take up that horizontal space like I was mentioning before. Instead, it has that 45-degree angle here so that you're utilizing the space above and below the machine instead of in front and back of the machine. It just is such a space saver. I don't know a lot of people who just have a giant 6-foot table that they can make all their projects on, plus another table to like craft everything on. So I do feel like the space saving of this design is really makes this machine special. And it is so freaking fast. That is one of the things I cannot get over about this machine. I just watched it cut that vinyl and that cardstock, and those are, I mean, I've made a lot of projects with this so far, and I still love watching it. It is so fast compared to a Cricut, which is already pretty fast. It is also crazy accurate. Other than those little scoring tool issues that I have not had a project turn out anything but perfect with this machine so far. It is also really good at making absolutely enormous projects that you cannot make with any other current Cricut on the market. So if you want to make giant wall decals or huge paper flowers or really long car decals, or somebody mentioned in our little chat about making really large floor decals like at a wedding, you know, like with the bride and groom's initials at the center of the dance floor. I mean, very cool, totally doable on this machine. And if you don't have a small business, this still could be the machine for you. Maybe you want to make really large projects. Maybe you just love making giant paper flowers, or maybe you want to make 20 t-shirts for a family reunion, or a dozen hats for a sports team, or maybe you're a teacher. I realize teachers have like no money, but this would be so good in a classroom for bulletin boards and murals and all sorts of other things. So if you have all the money in the world, go ahead and buy one of these and donate it to one of your favorite teachers, because I really think that a teacher would just really excel with this in one of their classrooms. All right, so the cons or the drawbacks. So the first is not everybody needs this machine, and that's totally fine. I mean, if you're happy with your small Cricut, more power to you. I'm not gonna stop using my Cricut Maker or my Cricut Joy or my Cricut Explorer. I have all the Cricuts. I'm not gonna stop using those machines just because I have this machine. This is gonna be my machine for making large projects and batch products, but I mean, it's quite large to use. So if I'm gonna make something small, I'm probably gonna pull out my smaller machine. This really feels more like an addition to a Cricut craft room. In addition to one of your smaller machines instead of maybe somebody's first machine. Although if you are coming at this and you're kind of brand new and you want it, I mean, go for it. So I really do feel like though it is more of an addition to something you might already have that makes smaller projects. And then one of its strengths is absolutely one of its biggest difficulties for me, and that is the size of the projects. It can make enormous projects, but dealing with those projects can be very difficult. So things like weeding a huge amount of vinyl, or peeling back the mat on that sort of purple shape I made earlier, assembling all these giant paper flowers, they just take up a lot of space. So while running the machine itself doesn't take up that much space, assembling projects takes up that much space. So you want to make sure that you have a decent work table aside from this machine, like aside from what the machine is sitting on, for you to assemble projects. And I know not everybody has that space. I just wanted to throw it out there that you will need, if you are making enormous projects, you will need a larger amount of space to kind of work with the project after it's been cut. Another drawback might be the price. I mean, at $1,000, this is expensive, and I totally understand if that is out of your budget. That's why Cricut has machines all the way from Cricut Joy, which I just saw on sale for Amazon Prime Day for $129, all the way up to this big guy at $1,000. They have a wide range of machines for a wide range of crafters. If you do want to buy this machine and it is out of your budget, you can consider financing. I'm not one to just be like, yes, let's finance everything, but if you really want it for your business, they do have financing options available through their partner. I think it's called Affirm. So that could be an option if laying out $1,000 is just not possible for you right now. And then finally, I think there are just a few kinks that Cricut needs to work out. So the first is that scoring stylus thing that I've now mentioned a couple times. There have also been a couple things I've seen in Cricut Design Space. I mean, I'm in like the beta version of Cricut Design Space for Cricut Venture, so I have noticed a couple just difficult things like laying out projects on the mat. The algorithm doesn't seem to be laying them out as well as I think they could be laid out. It's just leaving a lot of empty space. So I have spent some more time moving things within the mats and that sort of thing. And then also for me, that cutoff blade is not working. Obviously that's something that I will probably be able to get fixed. But right now I'm just kind of like these little things where I'm like, okay, it's 98% of the way there, but there are still a few things that they could work on to make it even better. Okay, so that was like a longer video than I've made about just about anything. But there is so much to talk about with this machine. I haven't even covered a bunch of it. So I will be doing videos going forward on using different aspects of this machine. We'll talk about print and cut. We'll go into a little bit more depth on cleaning it and do some other projects. But for now, that is my big overview of Cricut Venture. So do I think it's worth it for the right buyer? Definitely. I know this is not a machine for everybody, and I'm not out here to try and sell you something you don't need. But if you have a small business, or you want to make enormous projects, or you want to make things more quickly, this really is a wonderful machine. I've had very few problems with it, and the ones I have had, I have mentioned here so that you know about them. But overall, it's run pretty flawlessly for me, and I have cut a lot of things on it so far. I'm really happy with it. I think that the Cricut engineers were pretty brilliant at putting it at a 45-degree angle. I think that was just really, really smart to save space. And yes, it is a little bit expensive, but it is an investment, especially if you have a business. So it's up to you whether or not it's worth it for your needs, your space, your budget. If you have any questions about Cricut Venture, and I'm sure you may have some, I am happy to answer those in the comments. If you want a written version of this because you would prefer to read through all of this information, I have an even more detailed blog post over on my blog, and I will link to that below. If you found this video helpful or informative, I really would appreciate a like. Subscribe to my channel for more content about Cricut Venture. I'll see you next week.